efforts to strip citizens in New Mexico of their otherwise inalienable rights under the guise of a public health crisis.
From 2017 to 2021, 143 children were killed by guns.
And NAGR is filing a suit in the Northern District of Texas to put a stop to their overreach.
Either openly or concealed within cities or counties.
Your right to own a gun can also be restricted.
Background: the recent surge of gun-related tragedies in New Mexico has left communities reeling. The fatal shooting of 11-year-old Froylin Villegas outside a minor league baseball stadium in Albuquerque was a heartbreaking incident that echoed the tragic demises of two other young lives in the preceding weeks. 5-year-old Galilea Samaniego lost her life after being struck by a bullet while lying in her bed in an Albuquerque trailer park, and 13-year-old Amber Archuleta met a similarly tragic fate in Kesta, a small town north of Albuquerque. These devastating events, each involving minors, struck a chord of urgency in the state. Governor Michelle Grisham, a member of the Democratic Party, responded to this distressing trend with decisive and, for some, controversial action. She announced the immediate enforcement of a 30-day ban on carrying firearms in public spaces and on state property within Albuquerque and the surrounding Bernalillo County.
Today and will be effective for 30 days unless it's renewed. The governor says she knows people will disagree with certain portions.
And NAGR is filing a suit in the Northern District of Texas to put a stop to their overreach.
In doing so, she declared gun violence a public health emergency, seeking to address the issue head-on. The move highlights the complex and long-standing debate in the United States surrounding gun control. At its core lies the tension between safeguarding public safety and upholding the constitutional right to bear arms. The Second Amendment, a cornerstone of American law, has been a focal point of discussions and policy decisions for decades. It enshrines the right of citizens to possess and carry firearms, a principle staunchly defended by many. However, it also allows individual states to establish their own regulations concerning firearm ownership and usage. New Mexico's recent history has witnessed a series of tragic incidents resulting from gun violence. From mass slayings to heart-wrenching cases involving minors, the state has borne witness to the dire consequences of unchecked access to firearms. Governor Grisham's proactive response, manifested in the implementation of a temporary gun ban, stems from a genuine concern over the escalating rates of gun violence and drug abuse in the state. This step forward has propelled the nation into a critical conversation regarding the delicate balance between preserving public safety and protecting individual rights to bear arms. The governor's decision, however, is not without its share of controversy. While some see it as a necessary step to curb the immediate threat of gun violence, others perceive it as a potential encroachment on their Second Amendment rights. The debate surrounding gun control is one deeply rooted in American society, involving a range of perspectives on how best to ensure the safety and security of communities. Governor Grisham's actions have thrust this ongoing discourse into the spotlight, prompting a nationwide examination of the complexities surrounding public safety and individual freedoms. Governor Grisham's temporary gun ban. New Mexico Governor Michelle Grisham's recent announcement of a temporary gun ban has ignited a fierce national debate on public safety and gun control. The ban, enacted under a public health emergency declaration, aims to combat the alarming surge in gun violence and drug abuse rates in the state. The United States has long grappled with a contentious discourse on gun control. While the Second Amendment of the U.S. Constitution upholds the right to bear arms, individual states possess the authority to establish their own regulations regarding firearm ownership and usage. Governor Grisham, a Democrat, took a decisive step to address this escalating crisis. She introduced a temporary ban on carrying firearms in public spaces, utilizing a public health emergency declaration as her vehicle for change.
Issued her order only to be smacked down summarily and quite hard by the courts.
An assault weapon's only purpose is to kill people efficiently.
Efforts to strip citizens in New Mexico of their otherwise inalienable rights under the guise of a public health crisis.
This declaration is a potent tool, enabling the government to mobilize resources and implement swift measures in the face of a pressing public health crisis. In this case, the crisis at hand is the rising tide of gun-related crimes and drug abuse. The decision to implement this ban was profoundly influenced by recent tragic events. The untimely demises of a 13-year-old girl and an 11-year-old boy struck a chord of urgency with the governor. These heartbreaking losses were compounded by 2 mass slayings in the state during the month of May. Such events cast a somber shadow on the state's communities and magnified the necessity for immediate action. As the announcement of the gun ban met with both support and opposition, it quickly became the subject of legal controversy. Several gun rights advocacy groups mounted legal challenges, asserting that Governor Grisham's order violated the Second Amendment rights of New Mexico residents. They argued that any restriction on carrying guns in public spaces should be subjected to rigorous scrutiny to ensure its constitutionality. This reflects a fundamental constitutional debate at the heart of gun control discourse in the U.S. The federal judge presiding over the case ultimately sided with the gun rights advocacy groups, putting a halt to the enforcement of Governor Grisham's temporary order. While acknowledging the severity of the gun violence issue, particularly concerning the tragic demises of children, the judge maintained that Second Amendment rights should not be temporarily suspended without compelling evidence that the ban would specifically and effectively address the declared public health emergency. This ruling reaffirms the sanctity of the Second Amendment and emphasizes the necessity for evidence-based policy making, even in the face of a crisis. Despite the court's decision, Governor Grisham remains steadfast in her pursuit of gun control measures. Rather than rescinding the order entirely, she has chosen to make amendments specifying that carrying guns in certain areas like city parks and playgrounds is prohibited. This raises concerns about the potential infringement on the rights of lawful and responsible gun owners, particularly in situations where there is no substantial evidence to suggest a threat. Supporters of the ban assert that it is a crucial step towards safeguarding public safety. By temporarily restricting the carrying of firearms in public spaces, it is believed that the potential for impulsive acts of violence can be diminished. Proponents argue that this measure aligns with the broader imperative of protecting citizens from harm and preserving the sanctity of public spaces. However, opponents argue that such bans infringe upon individual rights guaranteed by the Second Amendment. They contend that responsible gun owners should not be penalized for the actions of a few. Instead, they advocate for alternative solutions such as bolstering mental health services, enhancing background checks, and investing in comprehensive education on responsible gun ownership. In decision, Governor Grisham's temporary gun ban in New Mexico is emblematic of the deeply divisive national conversation on gun control and public safety. The ban serves as a poignant reminder of the urgent need for constructive dialogue and pragmatic solutions in addressing this critical issue. Legal debate. In response to Governor Michelle Grisham's temporary gun ban in New Mexico, gun rights advocacy groups swiftly launched legal challenges, sparking a contentious legal debate. Their primary argument hinges on the belief that the governor's order infringes upon the Second Amendment rights of New Mexico residents, a position they argue is in direct contradiction to the constitutional right to bear arms. These advocacy groups insist that any limitation imposed on the right to carry firearms in public must undergo thorough scrutiny to ascertain its constitutionality. They contend that the Second Amendment, which guarantees citizens the right to bear arms, should not be subject to broad or arbitrary restrictions. According to their interpretation, any encroachment on this right necessitates a compelling governmental interest and a narrowly tailored solution that addresses that interest without unduly impinging on individual freedoms. Critics of the temporary ban further argue that it fails to distinguish between responsible gun owners and those who pose a threat to public safety. They emphasize the need for measures that target the root causes of gun violence, such as mental health issues and illegal firearms trade, rather than imposing blanket restrictions on law-abiding citizens. Conversely, proponents of the temporary ban contend that it is a necessary step towards curbing the escalating rates of gun violence in New Mexico. They argue that the Public Health Emergency Declaration provides a legal framework for implementing swift and effective measures to address this pressing crisis. By temporarily limiting the carrying of firearms in public spaces, supporters believe that potential acts of impulsive violence can be mitigated, thus safeguarding the well-being of communities. Proponents assert that the temporary ban is a measured response that does not infringe upon the core principles of the Second Amendment. They highlight that it is a temporary and targeted measure enacted to address a specific public health crisis. It underscores the need for a nuanced and comprehensive approach to address the complex issue of gun violence, one that takes into account both the constitutional rights of citizens and the imperative to protect public well-being. The outcome of this legal dispute will likely have far-reaching implications, not only for New Mexico, but for the broader national conversation on gun control and public safety. Federal judge's verdict. The federal judge's verdict in this case was a significant decision that directly impacted the enforcement of Governor Grisham's temporary gun ban. While recognizing the gravity of the gun violence problem in New Mexico, especially in light of the heartbreaking demises of children, the judge ultimately ruled in favor of the gun rights advocacy groups. The judge's decision was grounded in a fundamental interpretation of the Second Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, which safeguards the right to bear arms. He emphasized that this right should not be temporarily suspended without substantial and compelling evidence that the ban would directly and effectively address the declared public health emergency. In essence, the judge sought a clear and robust justification for such an extraordinary measure. The ruling emphasizes that the government must not only act decisively, but also ensure that its actions are tailored to the situation. Furthermore, the verdict has wider implications for gun control policies across the U.S. It reaffirms the high threshold that must be met when implementing temporary restrictions on gun rights, even in the face of pressing public health emergencies. This precedent may guide future legal debates on the intersection of individual rights and collective safety, providing a framework for evaluating the constitutionality of similar measures.
Either openly or concealed within cities or counties.
She'd probably back off and take that energy and put it elsewhere, but no.
In Swift, the federal judge's verdict represents a pivotal moment in the ongoing national conversation surrounding gun control and public safety. It highlights the intricate legal considerations that come into play when attempting to address a complex issue such as gun violence within the framework of constitutional rights. The decision serves as a reminder of the delicate balance that must be struck to protect both individual liberties and the well-being of the community. Analysis of the judge's decision. The federal judge's decision in the case carries significant implications for several key aspects of constitutional and public policy. Upholding Second Amendment rights. The judge's ruling strongly underscores the enduring importance of the Second Amendment within the framework of American constitutional law. It firmly asserts that any measures infringing upon this right, even those instated in response to pressing public health concerns, must meet strict legal criteria. This aligns closely with established legal precedents, particularly exemplified by the influential District of Columbia v. Heller case. This landmark decision unambiguously affirmed an individual's entitlement to firearm ownership as a means of self-defense. While Governor Grisham sought to confront the pressing issue of gun violence, the judge's verdict decidedly prioritized the preservation of individual Second Amendment rights.
From 2017 to 2021, 143 children were killed by guns.
Your right to own a gun can also be restricted.
And others prompting the governor to put a public health order in place taking aim at gun violence.
This fundamental tension stands at the core of the broader nationwide dialogue on gun control, encapsulating the ongoing struggle to strike an appropriate balance. Requirement for evidence-based policy. The judge's ruling places a significant onus on policymakers to substantiate any temporary suspension of constitutional rights, particularly in exigent circumstances, with robust empirical evidence demonstrating the efficacy of such restrictions. In this specific case, the judge critically evaluated the available evidence and ultimately determined that there was an insufficient basis to conclude that the ban on carrying guns in public would notably alleviate the issues of gun violence and drug abuse. Implications for gun control policy. The verdict is anticipated to exert far-reaching influence on other states and local jurisdictions contemplating analogous gun control measures. It lays down a crucial precedent, underscoring that such policies must be crafted meticulously and fortified by substantial evidence of their effectiveness. Additionally, it underscores the pivotal role that legal challenges play in shaping gun control policy, affirming their capacity to influence the trajectory of state and local regulations. The ruling emphatically stresses the imperative of a robust legal underpinning when implementing measures that intersect with fundamental constitutional rights, especially in times of crisis. As such, this decision is poised to leave a lasting imprint on forthcoming debates and policies concerning gun control, not only within New Mexico, but potentially across the entire nation. Ruling pauses New Mexico gun ban. The recent ruling in New Mexico has temporarily halted the enforcement of Governor Michelle Grisham's gun ban. a measure introduced under a public health emergency declaration to combat rising gun violence and drug abuse rates. This decision is subject to further scrutiny during a preliminary injunction hearing scheduled for approximately 2 weeks from now. The ruling specifically addresses the provision of the public health order that pertains to carrying guns in public spaces. While this aspect of the order has been paused, the remaining components of the order remain in full effect. The National Association for Gun Rights, an advocacy group that actively contested the governor's order in court, has welcomed the decision. They emphasize a fundamental principle, that the Second Amendment, which safeguards the right to bear arms, applies without exception. This perspective aligns with a long-standing legal interpretation that upholds the individual's right to possess firearms.
Double down on it and work overtime to strip her citizens of their otherwise inalienable rights.
They are obsessed with attacking law-abiding Americans' Second Amendment liberties.
They say that when we argue for removing weapons of war from the streets of America, we're actually telling them to repeal the Second Amendment.
The lawsuit contended that any restrictions on carrying guns in public spaces should be subjected to rigorous scrutiny to ensure their constitutionality. The judge's decision to temporarily halt the enforcement of the gun ban highlights the paramount importance of maintaining the integrity of constitutional rights, even in the face of pressing public health emergencies. It reaffirms the significance of the Second Amendment in American jurisprudence and emphasizes that any restrictions on this right must meet rigorous legal standards. Furthermore, the ruling underscores the necessity for evidence-based policymaking, especially when it comes to temporary suspensions of constitutional rights. In this case, the judge determined that there was insufficient proof to establish that the ban on carrying guns in public would substantially mitigate gun violence or drug abuse. This requirement for compelling evidence serves as a safeguard against hastily implemented measures that might unduly encroach upon constitutional rights. Looking forward, this ruling is anticipated to have implications beyond New Mexico. It establishes a precedent that similar gun control measures in other states and municipalities must be meticulously formulated and supported by substantial evidence of their efficacy. It highlights the significant role that legal challenges play in shaping gun control policy at both state and local levels. Overall, the recent ruling regarding Governor Grisham's temporary gun ban reflects a careful balancing act between public safety and constitutional rights. The decision underscores the importance of upholding the Second Amendment and the necessity for evidence-based policymaking, setting a precedent that may influence future gun control debates and policies, not only within New Mexico, but potentially across the entire nation. Debate erupts. The governor's order, which temporarily suspends the right to carry guns in public spaces, was introduced as part of a public health emergency declaration aimed at addressing escalating concerns over gun violence and drug abuse. However, this move faced immediate legal challenges from gun rights advocacy groups, who argued that it violated the Second Amendment rights of New Mexico residents. The federal judge presiding over the case ultimately sided with these groups, putting a pause on the enforcement of the governor's temporary order. The judge's decision underscored the significance of upholding Second Amendment rights, even in response to a public health crisis, and highlighted the necessity for evidence-based policymaking. Despite the court's ruling, Governor Grisham remains determined to pursue her gun control agenda. Rather than rescinding the order, she has chosen to make amendments, prohibiting the carrying of guns in specific areas like city parks and playgrounds. This has raised concerns about the potential infringement on the rights of lawful and responsible gun owners, particularly in situations where there is no substantial evidence to suggest a threat. The governor's unwavering stance on this issue has drawn criticism and raised questions about her motivations. The text suggests that there may be external influences or political advisors guiding her decisions. Additionally, it highlights the passionate response from New Mexicans who exercise their First and Second Amendment rights through peaceful protests, indicating a widespread discontent with the new gun ban law. In summary, Governor Grisham's recent announcement of the new gun ban law in New Mexico has sparked a contentious debate on the balance between public safety and constitutional rights. The court's decision to halt the enforcement of the order reflects the significance of upholding Second Amendment rights, even in times of crisis. The ongoing controversy surrounding this issue has implications not only for New Mexico, but also for the broader national discourse on gun control. Gun ban legal controversy. Governor Michelle Grisham's gun ban order has faced significant opposition, extending beyond the realm of political adversaries and gun rights activists. Key law enforcement agencies, including the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Office, the Albuquerque Police Department, and the Bernalillo County District Attorney Sam Bregman, a Democrat appointed by Grisham, have all declared that they will not enforce the policy. Even New Mexico's Democratic Attorney General Raul Torres indicated that he would not defend the order in court.
Not this governor. She absolutely has no quit in her. She is hell-bent on taking your rights.
They are coming for your guns. They're listing them out in this extensive legislation.
The controversy surrounding the order reached the national stage, drawing commentary from Democratic Congressman Ted Lieu of California, who expressed concerns about its constitutionality. Lieu, while expressing his support for gun safety laws, contended that the governor's order violated the U.S. Constitution. He argued that no state has the authority to suspend the federal constitution and emphasized that there is no provision for a state public health emergency exception in the U.S. Constitution. Governor Grisham responded pointedly to Lieu's criticism, asserting her jurisdiction over conceal and open carry laws in the state. She went on to extend an invitation to Lieu to join the next police academy class if he was genuinely interested in helping address gun violence. However, legal experts have noted that the governor's attempts to defend the order face a significant hurdle due to the Supreme Court's recent decision in New York State Rifle and Pistol Association v. Bruin. In this ruling, delivered by the court's conservative majority, a New York law regulating the public carry of handguns was struck down, and a new legal standard was established to evaluate firearm laws. The new standard, as quoted by the National Association for Gun Rights in its lawsuit, asserts that when the Second Amendment explicitly covers an individual's conduct, the Constitution presumes protection of that conduct. It places the burden on the government to demonstrate that its regulation aligns with the nation's historical tradition of firearm regulation. Given this legal precedent, experts suggest that Governor Grisham's order, subjected to the Bruin test, would likely struggle to withstand legal scrutiny. The ruling in New York State Rifle and Pistol Association v. Bruin sets a high bar for firearm regulations, emphasizing the need for such laws to align with long-standing traditions in the nation's history of firearm regulation. National implications. The announcement of the gun ban law by Governor Grisham holds significant implications on a national scale. This decision has the potential to set a precedent for other states grappling with similar concerns surrounding gun violence. If Grisham's approach proves effective and legally sound, it may embolden other governors to explore comparable measures in their own states, potentially leading to a shift in gun control policies at a broader level. This move might exert influence on other Democratic governors and lawmakers across the country who are deliberating similar gun control measures. If Grisham's decision garners public support and demonstrates success in reducing gun-related incidents, it could encourage leaders in other states to adopt similar strategies, thus contributing to a potential transformation in national gun control policies. The debate over the New Mexico gun ban law is anticipated to amplify the wider national discourse on the Second Amendment. It could prompt discussions regarding the boundaries and scope of this constitutional right, potentially reigniting conversations on gun control at the federal level. This could lead to a renewed focus on the interpretation and application of the Second Amendment in the contemporary context. Additionally, the legal battles that may ensue from this policy could establish a legal precedent affecting other states. Courts in different jurisdictions may refer to the rulings and arguments presented in the New Mexico case when deliberating similar cases within their own jurisdictions. This could lead to a ripple effect, influencing how gun control policies are approached in various parts of the country. National advocacy groups, both those advocating for gun rights and gun control, are likely to closely monitor the developments in New Mexico. Depending on the outcome, these groups may adjust their strategies and priorities, potentially influencing the larger national discourse on gun control. The impact of this decision could thus extend to the strategies and priorities of advocacy groups at a national level. Finally, the controversy surrounding the gun ban law may galvanize public opinion on both sides of the gun control debate. It could lead to increased activism, with citizens expressing their views through demonstrations, advocacy, and engagement with elected officials at all levels of government. This heightened public engagement has the potential to shape the broader national conversation on gun control and influence policy decisions at both state and federal levels. In essence, The decision made by Governor Grisham in New Mexico has the potential to resonate far beyond state borders, leaving a lasting impact on the national dialogue surrounding gun control policies and potentially shaping the future direction of such policies across the U.S. That's all for this video, folks. See you next time.